Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and you guys know what time it is. It's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community, and numerous people have linked me a video from Scooby. From Scooby, the OG of YouTube fitness, the grandfather of YouTube fitness, the wise one, Mr. Skateboard Squats himself. And he made a video and he talked about risk versus rewards, and people are like, Jason, he talks bad about squats. He said squats were a dangerous exercise. You're going to hate this. Let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, lovingly called my +5 hat of autism by many of you, and let's talk about this. Actually, he said a lot of good things and interesting things in this video. I'm going to disagree with what he said about squats, and I'll get into that in a minute, because I think that was the only thing I really had a problem with that he said. But he really kind of dropped a lot of little nuggets of knowledge in there. Again, it's the guy who's been lifting weights and training for decades. He's been putting out message on YouTube Fitness for longer than anyone else. He might be the original first fitness YouTuber. He might be the first. Scooby generally has mostly good stuff to say. I'm not saying I agree with everything he says, but he's a pretty reasonable person overall. And I don't think anyone can disagree with that point. Most of what he says is actually reasonably good advice. It's well thought out. This is obviously someone with some life experience, He obviously has some life experiences to share. So the thing I'm going to disagree with, though, he kind of said, look, you've got to consider risk versus rewards. Take squatting, for example. If you want to be an Olympic athlete and you're 18 years old, you're going to have to squat. But if you're a 70-year-old grandmother, the risk versus reward on it's probably too high. Well, that's where I'm going to completely disagree, Scooby. That demographic needs to be squatting. And I'll jump into some coaching on that in a minute. But, perfect example, I got my aunt into lifting. I got her into lifting. She started doing CrossFit and other stuff. I don't think she started squatting until she was around 60. All right. This year, my aunt has hit like a 253 squat in competition at age 67. She didn't start till she was already an older woman, right? She was already like 60 plus when she got under a barbell. Just squatted like 250 pounds at a USAPL meet. Going to nationals. She squatted 265 in the gym. She has never had an injury. Never had a training injury, not one. She's also always trained under coaches. So I'm going to disagree with that. That's the demographic that would benefit from squats the most. Older women? Post-menopausal women? If you talk about a demographic of people who need to squat, and I'm talking about this not just a risk versus reward, they absolutely need to squat. It's that demographic. And there's the health and the research and everything on that's overwhelming. And squatting is perfectly safe. You want to know who gets hurt squatting? Dumbass 18-year-old kids. That's who gets hurt squatting. Intelligent people training under a coach almost never get hurt squatting, including 60 and 70-year-old women. There are plenty of coaches who work with that demographic and they don't get hurt. All right, that's complete nonsense. It's ego lifting on these lifts that gets you hurt. It's poor fatigue management that gets you hurt. It's muscle imbalances that get you hurt. It's not squatting. Squatting is a pretty safe activity relatively compared to a lot of other things people do in the gym. It's relatively safe. So let's come over to the other stuff he said, though. I thought it was interesting because he talked about gear and everything else, and he kind of dropped a little hint there. Said, if you're just a guy who wants to look better, you're going to the gym, maybe going on anabolics might not be your best option from a risk versus reward perspective. If you weigh it out, it probably isn't, because you have to think about the consequence. What are you going to get from this action versus what are you going to pay for? What's your risk versus what are you actually going to obtain in terms of value from it? And he said, but if you're an 18-year-old who wants to go to the Olympics, you're going to have to use illicit substances. You are not going to have a choice. Kind of brings around the reality of sports. Like anyone out there at this point, if you honestly naively think that professional sports are even remotely clean, you've been duped. Like you are so far out of the loop as far as knowledge. You watch ESPN and you read the newspaper and you don't know anything about sports. Like you don't know anything about sports other than what the news tells you to believe about sports. Reality is all elite sports, all professional sports are pretty much walking lab experiments. And the drug use and cheating is not just rampant, it's pretty much mandatory at a certain level. And he's right. And I agree with that point. It's not as bad in sports as it is in something like bodybuilding, and it's not because it's not that everyone isn't using, they just don't use as much. You know, it's kind of Scooby dropped that bomb a couple months ago, didn't he? He said bodybuilding, professional bodybuilding is nothing more than a contest to see who can use the most drugs without dying. Right? In other words, your genetics good enough to not die from the excessive amounts of drugs you're putting in your body. Perfect example, Dallas McCarver wasn't. He didn't have the genetics to let him use 10 grams of gear a week and live. Killed him in his 20s. Ronnie Coleman had no problem. He's still alive. He's hurt, but he's alive. Therein lies the difference. You really think they were using different amounts? Come on. Be realistic there. But he kind of came over to the point, he brought up someone like Zyzz, and that's a perfect example, because Zyzz set an example, and tons of guys are like, well, I want to be like Zyzz, I want to be like Zyzz, and he's like, but that's already come and gone. In other words, all these guys honestly think, because they don't know anything about girls, right? That's what it comes down to. And older guys, we know this. We know what was up. We know Zyzz's game. Anyone out there who thinks that you were going to reach Zyzz's internet popularity, or you're even going to get laid as much as he did because you get the body like him and you use all the trend and the clean and everything that he did, you really think that, you're a fool. You're legitimately a fool. Scooby pointed out there are plenty of people who have physiques just as good as his who only have a few hundred followers online who are trying to build their following. Yep. And you got someone like me sitting here, 73 million views on my channel, and I don't look like Zyzz. Maybe that's not the key to getting followers. Maybe in his era it was because of the outgoing thing and the girls and everything else. But people need to think about the fact that how is Zyzz different from you? When they'll say silly stuff like that, and be like, I want to be like that guy. You better look at the environment. Like, we can tell any guy who's saying that, we know right off the bat you are a virgin. Like, straight up. You're 100% virgin. Maybe you got lucky and got laid once drunk at a party. Maybe, but probably not. If you honestly think that it was his physique that got him girls. And here's what we mean. Number one, yeah, he had a physique. Number two, had a nice face. Dude was a handsome dude, right? He had the jawline. Some of you guys would need surgery to do that. And seriously, if you're that unconfident, you're going to have problems anyways. Number two, he was confident and outgoing. If you're not confident and outgoing, best physique in the world's still not going to get the job done. All right. Okay. That's the first few things. And then we're going to come to something else on it. He had another ace in the hole. And this is a riskier ace in the hole than the others. But see, most of us who are old enough to have been younger and been around party scenes and everything at different points in our life, believe it or not, us older dudes have been. The drugs in the party girls was the other big deal. All right. So you had attractive guy, attractive face, attractive body, confident, outgoing, charismatic. Right? Who would show up at party scenes with party drugs. Let's be realistic here. Any of you guys ever been around the sort of scene that he went to? If you bring lots of drugs with you, you're going to get pussy even if you're ugly with a little bit of a beer belly. Right? Now, you're going to catch STDs and stuff along the way, but you're going to get pussy. Over to the point. He made, a big deal about it, of weighing all these different risks out. What are you getting as far as the risk versus the reward? Talked about fast food. Are you going to be better off? Do you really enjoy pizza and burgers so much that you're willing to be fat and to die young and have heart disease and everything else, eat pizza and burgers every day? That's what you have to weigh out. Or are you happier being healthy and fit and feeling good and living longer, being leaner, and maybe eating cleaner most of the time? You got to weigh out that risk versus reward. Same thing, a person chooses to smoke cigarettes. It's all risk versus reward. And that's stuff that he did a good job of just thinking about and explaining and putting stuff maybe in a context that a lot of people would think through when they look at all these different choices they make, whether it's choices of with their fitness, choices of, what sort of diet that they want to eat, right? Because, you guys can argue all you want. I'm going to do this flexible dieting. I'm going to live on protein shakes and Pop-Tarts, Pop multivitamin. Well, you could do that. But in terms of your overall health, you think that's really ideal? I don't think it is. And I think Scooby would agree with that. Probably be better off getting those same macros from nutrient-dense whole foods. All right, minimize your processed stuff. I say eliminate it. Probably keep it on the lower end though. But you know, again, that's what you have to weigh out. Do you really enjoy Pop Tarts so much that you have to have them? And the question I would ask is a lot of you out there, your younger guys listening to this, you know, it's time to make adult decisions. Like, you know, if you're a grown man and you really need to have that discussion, you really need to have that discussion as a grown man. You're now 19 years old, you're 21 years old. You really got to have that discussion of, I can't eat vegetables, or, I just really love Pop Tarts. It's time for you to probably grow up a little bit at that point. You probably need to go ahead and behave like a man at that point. At least with your major decision making. Just going to throw that out there. I want to assess those risk versus rewards a little bit better. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.